down to business.
When he drinks, he thinks.
That's the nectar of the gods, baby.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the #1 liquid-fueled, liquid-lubricated show on the interwebs. This is the Whiskey Musings Broadcast, and I am your drinking host, Rick. So tonight I have a topic that I've already gotten a strike on YouTube about. So don't be surprised if I all of a sudden disappear from YouTube after this topic. They tend to not like it when you question the narrative. And so, yeah, I fully expect that this one is probably not going to allow me to continue on YouTube. So if you're over on YouTube and watching, head on over to Rumble, get signed up and get subscribed to the Whiskey Musings Broadcast channel over there and join in with some awesome people in the chat. That's my most active outlet that I can tell you about. And, from what I can tell, and they are a good group of folks, and sometimes the chat gets a little rowdy. So you need to go over there and enjoy the chat. Also tonight, I have a absolutely cute and adorable pet of the week submitted by a listener, and hopefully that hopefully the individual who submitted that entry is going to show up here in the chat. Also, I have a special announcement about my Saturday show at the end of the program. I am going to have a special guest interview that I've been hoping to do for a while, and I was finally granted permission. They decided that they would finally come in and join. So this is going to be awesome. Saturday night's show is going to be awesome. Tonight's show is going to be very informative, I think, in terms of discussing a little bit about something that has kind of faded from the mainstream media, given all of the crap that we've got going on. I mean, between Joe Biden mistakenly believing that 92% of his base want him to actually run again, rather than 92% saying if they had a choice between him and Trump, who would they vote for? Which, obviously 92% of them said that they would vote for Biden, although he took that as 92% want him to run again, even though the numbers, I think it's roughly 2/3 of the Democrat base do not want him to run again. And I would say that probably close to 90% of Republicans don't want him to run. I don't know where the additional percentages that may want him to run came from. I personally think they might be part of the what they call the margin of error, or the MOE, for all of those polls. But, I'm sorry, the numbers that came out today with regards to the inflation rate being above 9%, and it will likely, knowing this administration is not getting a handle on this thing at all, it will likely hit the double digits by next month. That is my guess. Maybe not next month, maybe the month after, but unless they do something fairly drastic to curb spending and get the printing of money under control, I highly doubt that we will be back into the single digits during this administration unless something major happens. I would guess that we're probably going to be in double digits fairly quickly. Also, I haven't seen the numbers yet, but I'm also wondering if the GDP numbers show that we actually have a negative GDP this month, or this past month, and that we're actually in a recession. It certainly feels like it. A lot of the experts and economists are saying that we probably are. So hopefully we're going to find that out soon. Not saying that that's a good thing, because it's not. It's not a good thing. I mean, it kind of sucks when you have to go to the pump and you're paying, $4.50, $5 a gallon for gas. And it's horrible. But with all of that going on, and then you have like the January 6th thing and everything else going on, it's really becoming distracting. But we're starting to come back around. I mean, this is summertime, so not a lot of people are thinking about this. But of course, we have an election year. And so there's a lot of potential things coming down the pike with regards to that. And before I get into that, I want to give a shout out to some of the folks there that I see here on the chat. I see Jer, I see A-Dig, I see Redford 1238, and of course, Buddy Weiser, who always shows up. Thank you. Thank you very much for all of you to come and join and watch the show. I do appreciate that. I appreciate all of my subscribers and all of my viewers who come and watch my videos, whether it's live during the live streams and joining in on the chat, or catching up with them afterward, and leaving comments in the comment section of each video. I appreciate that. I do read every single one, even if I don't respond. I think I've only not responded to maybe one or two so far, but I try to respond to everybody. So do me a favor, and if you haven't done so yet, come on over to Rumble, sign up, join in, subscribe, and make sure that you know when I'm online. Or you can follow me on all of my social media that I have, as well as Locals. Locals, I know that it has a paywall. There is a subscription option, but there's also a public option. And I should say, I have not done anything in the subscription space as of yet. However, I'm considering it, but trust me, it's not something that I'm really looking forward to doing. But we'll see how time flies. So anyway, first things first, let me go ahead and get this out of the way. So the Institute on the Constitution was established in 2004 as a 501c3 nonprofit with one singular mission: to restore the constitutional republic through grassroots education. All courses and materials are developed using primary source documents and taught from the American view of law and government as defined in the Declaration of Independence in the following 3 key points. 1, there is a God. 2, our rights come from him. And 3, the purpose of civil government is to secure and protect our God-given rights. The IOTC offers the opportunity to educate yourself on our most precious founding document, the Constitution of the United States. They also provide tools to educate your community and get involved with local government. Start by taking their free U.S. Constitution course and go from there. Use my affiliate link, IOTC, that's India Oscar Tango Charlie .whiskey musings, all lowercase, all one word, .online to sign up. And while you are there, take a moment to look through their other course material and information. My affiliate link, once again, is iotc.whiskeymusings.online to get great content to learn about our historical founding and support the show in the process. That's iotc.whiskeymusings.online. Or if you just want to purchase this fabulous Saddleback leather-bound U.S. Constitution, buddy ready, buddy tested, buddy approved Constitution to support the show, go to constitution.whiskeymusings.online. Go check them out today. And of course, I thank the Institute on the Constitution for allowing me to be an affiliate member and to obviously work with them and get stuff. And also I owe some people. It's been exciting. I put together a Constitution class. I talked about it. I've got 3 people who are involved, and I owe you guys some information. I keep telling you I'm going to do it, and things have just kind of getting in the way. But I will be putting something together soon and sending it out to you as far as dates and starting and all of that stuff. So all of that's coming in the near future. So let me go ahead and get rid of that. All right. So growing up, well, one of the things when you own a house or you own a piece of property, one of the things that is sometimes the bane of your existence has to deal with weeds. And you want to be able to get rid of those weeds in an efficient way, as much of an efficient way as possible. Well, one of the things that I grew up using and believe me, it is extremely effective, or at least, it was. I don't know if it is now, but it certainly was. It was Roundup. And Roundup, when I was growing up, it was like the end-all be-all for anything weed-related. You sprayed that stuff onto it, and within 24 hours, the commercial showed you a weed that was, crushed and dead and everything else. And it was a great product. It is a fantastic product. Well, the funny thing was it was FDA approved. And now all of a sudden, here within the last 4 or 5 years, I believe, maybe less, I've seen ads on the television for people who are, who have been requested to sue Roundup because they're getting cancer from the herbicide that's found in it. And thank you, buddy. I see that. I keep forgetting to do that. So tonight I'm actually, pause for a second. So tonight I'm actually drinking out of my Pabst Blue Ribbon setup. And this is actually the liquid that's in here. It comes clear. This particular one comes clear, but I know you can kind of see down here by my finger and stuff. The green screen's kind of throwing that stuff off, but it turned brown. This one is clear in the bottle. I put it into a little barrel and aged it for about 2 weeks and got it to the color that it is now. It's kind of a light caramel color. And that, of course, is in my American shot glass. Of course, that's one of my favorites, is to drink it neat and sip it out of the shot glass. I also like my stuff over ice as well, occasionally. But I'm holding off some of my favorites for Saturday. And again, you'll have to hang out for the end of the show to figure out why. Those of you who are, there are some people who are in the know about this. So don't be surprised if it pops up in the chat. But, all right. So back to what I was talking about. So a cancer-linked herbicide is that Roundup was using. Turns out that it's cancer linked. They've had lawsuits because of it. They actually just settled, and Montesano was the manufacturer of Roundup, and they were taken to court. People who used Roundup on a regular basis, they ended up going to court. Now, Roundup came out in 1974, roughly, and it, I grew up mostly during the 80s. We'll leave that alone. But the point is that, I grew up using it and that kind of stuff, but not to the extent that most of these people who have had cancer strike them on a lot of situations. But they were sued. And they had their court case won. It was a class action, I believe. And so, they had a settlement, and it was for millions and millions of dollars. Well, if you take a look, so this next thing I'm going to show you is a little scary. So let me go ahead and pop this up. This is a little scary. If you look at this headline from the Washington Times, it talks about cancer-linked herbicide found in urine of more than 80% of Americans. Now, this, I bring this up not to pick necessarily on Montesano. I mean, they're doing their thing. They've already gotten in trouble for it. That isn't what this show is necessarily about. But what it is about is the length of time that we have had with this particular product for health issues to develop inside of people, and to have a organization be essentially deemed culpable based off of legal proceedings. And in this particular case, we're dealing with a product that not everybody uses. But what about an untested vaccine? And by untested, I mean that it was a lot of the red tape was taken down. The FDA rubber stamped it because it was believed to be the only cure for a specific disease, in particular, a specific virus. So what is going to happen 20, 30, 40 years down the road? Now, think about this. In this article, they actually have the company itself was, let's see, the company itself was, well, actually, I'm sorry. The herbicide itself was sent out in 1974, and yet the U.S.-based lawsuits all the way up into 2020 are claiming that the weed killer is, obviously causing cancer. 2016, 20, they've hit, well, there have been several different lawsuits in the 2000s. Okay. Now, Buddy brings up a good point, and I wasn't necessarily focused on the 80% of Americans with regards to how many Americans actually have it in their urine. You're right. Just like, some of these other testing, they may or may not, they may or may not have an accurate number of people. They're just sort of guesstimating. ADIG also comes up with a good point that they do tests at the sewage plants to kind of take a look at what's going on. But my point here is that you have from 1974, when the product was brought on board, all the way up into the 2000s, and you're looking at, 26 years at least there, 30 plus years by the time you hit to, 2020. So the question really becomes all of the stuff that has come out, and I don't know if anybody's really been watching. I've been paying attention to it mainly just because of the fact that, I want to know. I really and truly want to know. But the way that this is going on about this situation is the fact that you had something that was trusted 30 years ago. And even after, now keep in mind, this is after testing had already been done in order to ensure that it was safe for the most part for human use, or for use around animals and things like that. So the FDA went ahead and approved this thing. Here we are 30 plus years later, and you have these things talking about how they have safety issues, and it's cancer linked, and now you're having health issues and so on and so forth. The same thing kind of happened with asbestos. Asbestos was thought to be a very safe product, and many, many years later, all of a sudden, everybody ended up with getting things like black lung and that kind of stuff after working around it for many, many years, because asbestos was used in the Navy. It was used as a fire retardant. It was used in brake pads for a very long time on cars, and it was thought to be very safe. So the question that I have here is in regards to the most recent round of vaccines and why the government itself is not paying attention to some of the challenges or some of the issues that are popping up about this, and why we're even dealing with people who are saying, oh, that's wrong. They're perfectly safe. They're perfectly safe. And I also remember, believe it or not, let me see if I can find him. I also remember this guy talking about something really major.
I'm not going to shut down the economy. I'm not going to shut down the country, but I'm going to shut down the virus.
I'm going to shut down the virus.
I'm going to shut down the virus.
I will take care of this. I will end this. I will make sure we have a plan.
I'm going to shut down the virus. I'll shut down the virus.
I'm going to shut down the virus. What I would say is I'm going to shut down the virus.
I'm going to shut down the virus.
Look, there is no federal solution. This gets solved at a state level.
Okay. And as we all know, pass the buck Biden, pass the buck from his federal organizations down to the state level, because at first he wanted to put in things like vaccine mandates. And of course, a lot of people were like, hey, you know what? Those mandates, we don't want them. This should be a personal and individual decision, just like buying something that's deemed potentially hazardous to your health, like cigarettes as an example, because cigarettes are another thing. But hiding information and having it come back many, many, many years later is a habit of this government. And so it kind of makes you wonder, first of all, how is it that, or why is it that we have these kinds of situations? I mean, you would think that at least these companies would have some sort of integrity, or at least some of these doctors would have some integrity and stand up and say, look, this isn't actually necessary. Now, to make myself 100% clear, if you are in a high risk group and this thing is this shot is the only thing that is going to protect you moving forward. And by high risk, I'm talking about having what the CDC said is, 4 or more comorbidities. You should use the advice of your doctor to do whatever that you want. But coming back around to this and sitting here and trying to throw in more mandates and making people take this thing like my wonderful governor has done for all state employees, that you have to be, and this is mandated in order to keep your job, you have to be up to date on all rounds of boosters and the originals, all the way up to whatever is recommended today. This is a problem. And for the government to sit here and to say that, oh no, this is completely safe, when how many other products went through safety trials, this one hasn't gone through the requisite amount of time. And this is part of the problem. You also have things like this article that came out, this one came out in May of 2022. And this makes you even question even more, like the fact that there were secret payments that went to Fauci and Collins and others supposedly at the National Institute of Health, the NIH, which we know Fauci is like the darling of the media when it comes to dealing with COVID. He's been the face of everything, and he's recommending stuff moving forward. He's been recommending all of these things moving forward. And he keeps telling people, hey, you know what? Get it. All right. He was on a show, Fox News show, and I can't remember. I think it's Your World is the title. And he was doing an interview, and he actually made an interesting admission. And let me go ahead and bring that up. Let me replay this. Shoot, I hate it when it does
vaccines, because of the high, one of the things that's clear from the data, that even though vaccines, because of the high degree of transmissibility of this virus, don't protect overly well, as it were, against infection, they protect quite well against severe disease leading to hospitalization and death. And I believe that's the reason, Neil, why at my age, being vaccinated and boosted, even though it didn't protect me against infection, I feel confident that it made a major role in protecting me from progressing to severe disease. And that's very likely why I had a relatively mild course. So my message to people who seem confused because people who are vaccinated get infected, the answer is, if you weren't vaccinated, the likelihood you would have more severe course than you did have when you were vaccinated.
Now, I take exception to that last statement that he made in regards to the fact that he's saying that being vaccinated is, as he puts it, a high likelihood that the severity of the illness would not be as bad if you were not vaccinated. I honestly would love to know where he's getting his data from, because as far as I can tell, there is not one single long-term study that has ever been done that can definitively prove that if someone does not have, outside of the very first year, so let's keep this in mind, the people who got the virus, during the first year, before we had any type of shots to prevent this, okay, they are the control group. And I can tell you, based off of the first year data, and knowing that within the first year, we did not have as many deaths as what we had the following year under Biden and having the shots available. Okay. One could make a correlation, not necessarily a causation, but a correlation that basically states that while the very first round of the variants, the alpha variant, was definitely more deadly, that it wasn't as transmissible as the current variants that are running around here. Now, let me explain to you a little bit about how the standard flu shot works, because this virus is very similar to the flu shot, or very similar to the flu, in the fact that it is a respiratory illness. It is passed around by airborne and airborne transmission and that kind of stuff. Hence the reason why they wanted you to have the distance and so on and so forth, which is proven to be just an arbitrary number that they created out of the air. But the thing about it is the flu shot, they make guesses as to what the likely next mutation will be for that flu shot. And they create, or for that flu virus. And so they create the shot in anticipation of whatever the variant works or will eventually become during flu season. Now, the thing about it is that shot is sometimes is effective, sometimes is not. And so they're making guesswork at it. They, according to all information sources that I've been able to gather right now, they have not even bothered to make any changes to the current formula in order to try and combat these variants that are coming out. Now, the latest one that was announced, I think, was BA.5 or something like that. And as we've learned from all manner of time and everything else, we have had where the virulence, meaning the rate of transmission and how easily it can be transmitted, goes up, while as the deadliness of it goes down over time. And eventually you'll get to a point down the road where it's not quite as deadly, especially not to those who are not vulnerable versus those who are vulnerable. And we're kind of at that point realistically right about now. But here's the thing. In the past, a vaccine, and especially when you look at something like the smallpox vaccine as an example, everybody touts the smallpox vaccine as being the number one reason why smallpox was essentially eradicated in the Western world. And the reason being is because of the fact that a vaccine under normal conditions should be considered to where once you get the shot, you have immunity. Okay. Now I can tell you, I went through it too. I did not have chickenpox when I was a kid. And when my children ended up getting chickenpox, I had to go in and get a chickenpox vaccine. Now, when I talk to the nurses, talk to the doctors, I'm like, look, this is a chickenpox vaccine, so therefore I should not get chickenpox. And they basically told me, yes, as soon as you have this vaccine, you will not get the chickenpox. You are protected. That's what a vaccine is supposed to be. Okay. It is supposed to prevent you from getting the disease. And like Fauci just pointed out, this vaccine that they have is not preventing you from getting it. In his mind, it's preventing you from the more severity of it, which realistically is more of a therapeutic rather than a vaccine in terms of strict definitions. Well, in the beginning, they had the original CDC website up, and let me just go ahead and show you this because this is the original website right here. And let me go ahead and blow this up for you. Hopefully I do this right. Oop, wait. Don't know why it's doing. I did that. Let's go here. Let's go like this. There we go. So if you look right here, this is from, I think, 2014, if I recall correctly. But this is the definition that vaccine, and I'll read it for you for those who are on the audio. A product that produces immunity, therefore protecting the body from disease. Let me read that again. And no, I'm not reading from a teleprompter. A product that produces immunity, therefore protecting the body from the disease. So that's what a vaccine was up until recent history. Okay. Now, after that time, we knew that the CDC changed it. How did they change it? Well, here's what they changed it to. A preparation that is used to stimulate the body's immune response against diseases. So this is what they, and here, let me go ahead and zoom in on this so you guys can see it a lot better. But there it is, a preparation that is used to stimulate the body's immune response against diseases. So they went from this, which is a product that produces immunity, over to a product that is used to stimulate the body's immune response against diseases. Okay, now, we all thought for a long time that there was a switch. Now, the funny thing about this is this was switched actually very quietly. Just like a lot of journalistic places will actually go ahead and issue editorial changes and notes when they're caught in a lie or an issue or something like that. So what they'll do is they'll issue an editorial note, and when they do that, it's very small at the very bottom of the page. So why did this get switched? Well, according to this article in the Epoch Times, there are some emails that they obtained via a FOIA request that tell us why the CDC changed the definition of vaccines. And they essentially changed it because of, quote, the definition of vaccine we have posted is problematic, and people are using it to claim the COVID-19 vaccine is not a vaccine based on our own definition, end quote. And that was from Alicia Downs, a CDC official. She wrote this in an email on August 25th, 2021 to a colleague. Okay, so if the original definition was that it provides immunity, which we pretty much know from things like smallpox and chickenpox and some of the other places, you get a shot, you're pretty much done. You don't have to worry about it anymore. And Ben Shapiro actually even has been saying that a lot on his podcast. He's like, hey, I got my 2 shots. I'm done. It's over. Now, all of a sudden, you have to change the definition in order to fit what is actually happening. So we know that the shot does not protect you from getting the virus or getting the disease. It may, don't know because we don't have a control group, but it may prevent you from the most severe illness. And again, just on that note alone, if you are older, you should potentially very deeply consider it. But if you're not in one of those high-risk groups, maybe your choice is otherwise. Well, if that's the case, then why the mandates? Because if this thing really does not prevent transmission, does not prevent you from getting it, does not prevent people from getting sick, and anecdotally right now, we're starting to see more and more stories and information come out that, hey, people who have the shot are actually getting it at a higher rate than those who don't have it. you got to question what's going on here. Okay. Now, apparently a lot of people question this. And if you want to read through the article and read through the 67 pages that were part of this FOIA request, I have the link to the Epoch Times article. You can go and take a look. As you see in this frame here, you can scroll down. There's a lot of information, or a lot of pages to this document. Like I said, 67 pages of these things for it. And it's really interesting that it was going and taking something and modifying the definition in order to fit a particular situation. Now, where have we heard that before? How about changing the definition of woman as an example? This is kind of odd. All right. A new study. So in terms of questioning this, and those of us who haven't had the therapy have been saying that, hey, natural immunity is better. And most people have been like, well, you can't say that because so many people in America or even around the world took this thing. Well, there's an article that came out again in the Epoch Times. And the only reason why I'm focused on the Epoch Times is because the standard mainstream media is not doing these articles. Okay. But this came out in the Epoch Times, and it basically shows that a study that was done in Qatar has actually found that natural immunity is 97% effective against severe virus infection after 14 months. Now, if you'll notice, there was some conversation about the effectiveness of the shot and its long-term effects as to how effective it would be across time. And there were several people who were saying, well, we honestly don't know. It could be 3 months, could be 6 months, could be a year, could be whatever. And these are experts that are saying this, okay? So now that we have some time, we have some capability to go back and grab data and get more of a statistical analysis on this data. There are places that are outside of the U.S. that are actually taking a look at these numbers, and I would argue potentially are a little bit more, shall we say, reliable in terms of the numbers, because they didn't keep changing their definitions throughout the time period. But they're going through and they're taking a look now, and we're starting to look back, just like with the whole Roundup scenario. They're taking a look and looking back on this, and we're starting to find out a bunch of things that may not be to the CDC's or the NIH's or the federal government's liking. And so the question that I actually have on all of this basically is, how can anybody go through realistically and call this, number one, call it an actual vaccine, and number two, not understand that natural immunity is probably more effective, especially now after we've had all of these variants that have gotten, again, more transmissible but weaker over time, which is the standard practice throughout all of history and all the known history when dealing with viruses across the board. So honestly, I am not a doctor. I can tell you, I personally have my own opinion and my own desire and what I think is going on and what I think is best for me. And when I consult my healthcare practitioner, that we discuss it and we go through it. We go through all of the evidence and the information and everything else. But you need to make your own decisions. You know, Dan Bongino made his choice. He got it. But at the same time, he's also standing up, and he's still standing up for the people who have been wrongfully fired because of this thing. If you literally cannot, number one, tell me 100% for sure that this thing is going to kill me, and you cannot tell me 100% for sure that the medicine that you are giving me, or the shot in this case that you are giving me, is going to keep me from getting it and keep me from dying too, because that's the other thing. It supposedly prevents serious disease, but some people who had the treatment ended up dying anyway from it. So now at this point, I think we've got enough data to basically look and say, you know what, this probably isn't what we said it was, and we should more than likely back ourselves off of some of these stances and work from a more logical and, shall we say, rational perspective with regards to this. Side note, I have a close friend of mine who just went through being diagnosed and testing positive for this virus. He could not take the shot and he survived. He's alive. He did say that it was probably one of the worst things that he's ever gone through as far as like a cold or whatever. But that being said, he wasn't like on his deathbed or anything. He was communicating with me throughout the time that he was that he had it. Now, I'm not going to say who he is or anything else, but all I can tell you is that, first of all, I'm glad that he is all right, because his other health issues could have presented themselves in some types of difficulties. So anyway, all right, let me move on from this. I got to clear some of these things off, because I see, and I'm actually thankful that this, that the individual who submitted this is here. I see them in the chat, so this is going to be great.
Please check your mailbox. A new message has arrived.
That's right. A new message has arrived with this week's Pet of the Week. And this week's Pet of the Week is, oh, let me get rid of that. Gizmo. Gizmo is a Shih Tzu, a very, let's see, how are they described? A very spoiled Shih Tzu. And as you can see here, Gizmo seems to be sleeping, resting very comfortably on what appears to be some sort of a toolbox. I'm guessing because it's purple, it probably has maybe some, I don't know, purple tools in it or something. I don't know. I wouldn't be comfortable in this position, I can tell you. But this Gizmo is essentially owned by J Monty 0071. That's right. J Monty 0071. So this is Gizmo. I can imagine why you called him Gizmo. But anyway, he is owned by, or maybe he actually owns. You know, the funny thing about dogs and cats, I'm going to tell you, dogs have owners. Cats have staff. And Gizmo, like I said, is taking a comfortable nap, it looks like. I'm sure Gizmo gives you a lot of love and hangs out a lot to Gizmo. All right. My mother has a Shih Tzu or a Shih Tzu cross. I can't remember. She's had Shih Tzu crosses and Shih Tzus for the last, I don't know, several years, couple decades, I guess. And they are kind of interesting. So let me ask you this, and J Monty, you go ahead and throw this up in the chat, but let me ask you this about Gizmo. Does Gizmo bark at every single motion that happens outside the house? If Gizmo is able to actually see like what's going on or even hear what's going on? Because I can tell you, my mom's dog, if somebody is just walking down the street in front of her house, that dog goes absolutely bananas. So anyway, we'll wait and see if J Monty can respond here, but we'll go ahead and move on from that. Okay. Okay. So Gizmo is apparently a rescue dog. He acts like a big bad guard dog, but he is not. You know, it's funny. It seems to me like the smaller the dog, well, Shih Tzus are actually supposed to, if I can remember correctly, they were bred in China, and the term Shih Tzu, if I recall correctly, actually means or translates to little lion. And they tend to be very protective of their space, and they also tend to be very, very loud and boisterous. And apparently he also hides from the cat. Well, that's good. That's really good. Thank you, Monty, for sharing Gizmo with us. That was he's a cute little guy. I like it. I did receive some other submissions, but please, if you want to have your pet featured on Pet of the Week, that is my Wednesday night broadcast, send an email with the word pets in the subject line or pet in the subject line, and tell me a little bit about, send me a picture, tell me a little bit about them, mostly their breed, their name, obviously, and any other pertinent information. Also tell me what you want to be called by when you send me the email. That email address to submit is fans, FANS, that's Frank Alpha November Sierra, at whiskeymusings.online. Once again, that's fans, FANS, at whiskeymusings.online, and I'll get them into the rotation, and we'll get them up on the screen and give them their 15 seconds of fame, because pets are absolutely wonderful. They're really good for the blood pressure, except for mine. No, I love my animals. I love them. Okay. So we all know that Biden has a big problem with the energy industry. We also know that Biden apparently, at least according to him, inherited a problem with the supply chain. We also know that Biden is a staunch union guy. Okay. So this next article came out, and this is actually a little bit of disturbing news. And the reason why I say that is because I believe that this is going to potentially cause more problems with the supply chain than what they expect. Now, this is focused in California. However, don't be surprised if, because most of the Democrats, especially those in California, they kind of are the test bed for some of these totalitarian decisions and processes and things like that. But take a look at this. Apparently 70,000. So there was a bill that was passed. I think it's AB 5, I believe it's called. Let me see if it, we'll take a look here in just a minute, but it was mostly focused at first, I think, on Uber drivers, and the taxi cabs were having problems with all the Uber drivers. And for anybody that has never been to either LA or San Francisco or any of the big cities in California, traffic is so dang bad, and they charge for parking, especially inside the city centers. So, and by charge, I mean, it's exorbitant. I'm talking like 30, sometimes $40 or $50 a day just for a standard day, daytime kind of thing. And so what they're doing is they are focusing on the self-employment aspect of the Uber drivers. Now, this has been going on back and forth for, I'd say probably 3-4 years, because I actually started hearing a little bit about this when I would travel down to California for work, and I heard a little bit about it in the news and that kind of stuff with regards to Uber drivers in particular. But this is going to impact the trucking industry at the same time. Because of the way that the law was written, it's going after self-employed people. So people who are employed, self-employed truckers in California, they now face a shutdown under a new state law. Now, if you'll remember, I did do an episode where I was talking about the supply chain issues way back in the day. well, I say way back in the day, like during, some of the shutdowns and things like that. And I kind of spoke about the backup of the ships in the port of Los Angeles. Now, the Port of Los Angeles is actually two parts. It is both the Port of Los Angeles direct as well as the Port of Long Beach. And what in particular, what I was talking about in that episode had to deal with the fact that both of those ports actually service roughly 40% of the entire nation's shipping. Let me say that again. 40% of the entire nation's products go through the Port of Los Angeles and the Port of Long Beach. Now, back then, when I was talking about the article, there was a big push in terms of California with regards to its environmental policies that it had to deal with some older trucks. Now, for those of you that are not familiar, these trucks, these diesel engines and everything else, they pretty much can last a very, very, very long time because diesel engines, because the diesel itself is actually more oil than gas, it serves to lubricate the engine a lot better than our standard gasoline engines do. Gasoline by itself is a corrosive, not a lubricant, whereas diesel, on the other hand, is more of a lubricant and not so much of a corrosive. And what ends up happening is you can get a vehicle and a engine in some cases to do, 500,000 to 1 million miles, potentially more if it's taken care of. And you can have somebody who owns a vehicle like that who can get 10, 20, 30 years out of it, provided that it doesn't get into any accidents or have any other issues. And so a lot of these independent truckers have purchased their trucks and have been using them for many, many, many years. And one of the challenges that the trucking industry did have in the beginning was because of the fact that California put together an environmental policy that cut out trucks over a certain age. And so you had a lot of independent truckers that were going into California at one point who could not deliver or pick up to certain areas within California because of these environmental restrictions. And now you have this where self-employed truckers who even have like new engines and new rigs are now even going to be shut down again just because of the fact that they are self-employed and they don't run for like a major organization or a major company. That they went and they bought their truck. Many of them sleep in their trucks. That is like a home to them. They may or may not actually have a home. I've heard of like husband and wife teams going out and doing long haul trucking because of the fact that it gives them an opportunity to not only make money while they're on their travels, but they can also see places in America from their truck windows. And so, self-employed truckers, and honestly, it from what I understand, I don't know this for sure, but from what I understand, you can make a pretty decent living as a over-the-road trucker, an OTR. The point is here, though, is that California is now targeting these people, and they literally are targeting these people, and it's going to cause serious problems with our supply chain. Because again, as I said, 40% of our goods come through the Port of Los Angeles and Long Beach, which are right next to one another. And you now have 70,000 potential less trucks on the road because of this law that's been put into effect. And now the industry says, based on the subheadline here, that it's pouring gasoline on the supply chain crisis. I would tend to agree with that. That, California is looking to do this for whatever reasons. I mean, I would imagine it has something to do with the unions and big corporations and things like that. But we already have supply chain crises. We already have supply chain problems. And do we think Pete Buttigieg is going to go out to California and try to convince them to suspend this? to help alleviate the supply chain issues? No, he's not, because he's right there with them. He thinks that this is a good thing, and he will not be interested in trying to go out and help the American people to push this and get this taken care of in the long run. All right. So moving on from that, I wanted to bring that to you because that's very important. It's something to keep an eye on, kind of like the whole China-Taiwan thing. It's important to keep an eye on some of these things. Now, one of the biggest things that have been running around, obviously, since the Dobbs decision overturning Roe v. Wade, has been the conversation around abortion and which states are going to have it, which states are not, which states are blocking it, which states are allowing it. And one of the things that I was having a conversation with a friend of mine, and he and I, we tend to view this particular subject a little bit differently, mainly just because I come from more of the religious aspect and the religious side of things. But and he's a little more agnostic. He's not really associated with any religion. That being said, I caught this in the Epoch Times also, which brings to light an interesting conundrum. And I want to point out what this is. So apparently a federal judge in Arizona blocks a law that essentially defined when life begins. Now, regardless of your stance on abortion, I mean, honestly, let's just, regardless of that stance, like I was telling my friend, whenever you have a discussion about something, you have to start from some kind of a common foundation. And one of the big challenges that we have in regards to discussing abortion and trying to come up with a reasonable discussion about abortion has to center around at what point does that quote unquote clump of cells become an actual individual life form. Now, that is worthy. Let me add to that. That is worthy of being considered a separate human life and therefore having separate rights. Now, I've been telling you on this program that the predominant of America understands, may not like it, but understands that that life, usually within the first trimester, is probably within the realm of possibility for abortion. Now, I whether or not I agree, it doesn't really matter. The fact is that the roughly 2/3, I think, if I recall correctly from my other episode, they believe that the first trimester is usually a gray area. After that, it becomes harder and harder to justify an abortion from somebody. But without really sitting there and figuring out exactly when this thing, this baby, this clump of cells becomes a human life worthy of being protected, is the crux of the conversation when it comes to abortion. Now, a lot of people believe that a heartbeat, a detectable heartbeat, is the cutoff line. And usually other people would say, well, when it can live on its own outside of the womb without medical intervention is when we should consider it viable. That, if I recall correctly, is somewhere in the 30 to 35 week period, give or take. Some people, like this Arizona law threw on, is that it recognizes that life begins at conception. Now, if you look at the actual scientific focus on what life is, life can be broken down to simply a disparate genetic material that is unlike both of its parents, meaning the two organisms that contributed the DNA to the offspring when the offspring becomes its own DNA molecule, that's when life would technically begin. And the reason why I say that is because with amoebas basically pinch themselves off and they become a new amoeba. Their mitochondrial DNA inside the cell is changed and modified slightly so that it's not exactly like its parent where it came from. Okay. So the whole point of this law is basically to say that, look, you have DNA string 1, DNA string 2, and they combine and create DNA string 3. Therefore, technically, according to science in most cases, that's when life begins. And I would tend to agree with that definition if you're going to go with the strict scientific definition. But again, until we actually get together and do this and have a conversation and come to a common foundational conclusion as to when that becomes a human life, then all of the rest of our arguments are pretty much null and void, because you cannot sit here and have a conversation with someone who believes in abortion, who basically says that a baby doesn't become a baby until it is born out of the womb, which is essentially where most Democrats are trying to take it. They are trying to push 9 months. You can terminate your pregnancy up to 9 months. Now, most reasonable and rational people would say that the heartbeat is probably a good place to cut that off. And that's what Texas has done, was they basically said that if you can detect the heartbeat, then that pretty much that eliminates doing an abortion above that. But I wanted to bring this to your attention because, of course, this has to deal with a crucial foundational question that I don't hear very many people asking, basically saying, at what point can we agree on at what point a baby becomes a human life worthy of protection and worthy of rights under our Constitution, in terms of, moving forward. All right. So that is my final Whiskey Musings thought of the evening. So now comes the big announcement. I have been talking to this person for a while. I have been attempting to get traction with them, and she finally agreed. If everything goes right, Saturday night, and we're going to be testing the technological aspect of this, but Saturday night, I will have the one and only executive producer of the Mark K Show here live Saturday night for an interview. This is the wonderful, the beautiful Hannah Hickox. She is going to come here and join with me. We've got a probably about a 30-minute segment or so of a conversation that we're going to be having. So you guys have to come and check it out on Saturday. That is 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern time. Check your time zones in that right here on Rumble, maybe not on YouTube, depending upon if they read tonight's episode and decide that I need to get kicked. But Hannah will be joining us. It is an honor and a pleasure, believe me, for having her on. And this is going to be awesome, provided that nothing drastic happens between now and then to either of us. So anyway. All right. Thank you very much for joining. If you are a watcher and not a subscriber and like what I'm doing with the broadcast, please do me a favor. Go over to Rumble, sign up, do a subscription. It's totally free. And I absolutely love the seeing all of my subscribers and everything else, and seeing my subscriber number go up, because in order for this broadcast to get out to more people, I need to obviously get more subscriptions and everything. I'm going to tell you, I've been checking the numbers. My last week's show, last Wednesday's show is actually my top or second. Sorry, let me rephrase that. It's number 3 in the Rumble rankings right now. My number 1 is episode 12, which is my Independence Day and Declaration of Independence. Not this year's, probably, and definitely not last year's. I think it was my first one that I did. That one is the highest at almost 1,000 views. And so anyway, if you would like to have your pet featured, or if you have questions for whiskey for Saturday night, I do have a question geared up. But if you want to send in the questions for whiskey, both of them are the same. Send it to fans@whiskeymusings.online. The link is in the description of the video and everything. Also, do me a favor, if you would like to score some local logoed gear, you can run on over to store.whiskeymusings.online and check it out there. Have a great evening, everybody. We'll see you Saturday with the lovely Hannah Guile from the Mark K Show right here on the Whiskey Musings broadcast. Good night, everyone.